Salvete omnes! In this lesson, we will learn first and second conjugation verbs. Before watching this video, please read pages 41 through 45 in your textbook. This lesson will cover the following topics: review of personal endings and thematic vowels, forming present active indicative first and second conjugation verbs, forming future active indicative first and second conjugation verbs, and forming perfect active indicative first and second conjugation verbs. So far, we have learned how to conjugate third conjugation verbs in the present, future, and perfect active indicative. Why we learned third conjugation first, I have no idea. But now we get to learn the first and second conjugation patterns. Before we get into all of that, I want to spend a bit of time reviewing a few concepts. Remember that we recently learned the concept of personal endings. In Latin, all verb endings, no matter the tense, voice, or mood, are based on this set of endings: ost, mostis, und. We also learned that verb conjugations are classified based on thematic vowels. That is, the vowel that appears at the end of a verb's stem, or, depending on your perspective, at the beginning of a verb's ending. Verbs in the third conjugation are technically athematic, but you can consider short e as their thematic vowel, which is most obvious in its second principal part: scribere, ducere, mittere, for example. First conjugation verbs have a thematic vowel of a. As an example, we will use the verb amo, amare, amavi, amatum, love. Here are your present active indicative endings: amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant. Now let's break these down. Remember that to form present active indicative verbs, you take the verb's first principal part, in this case amo, and take off the o. This leaves you with the stem for the present system, so all you have to do is add the appropriate endings. These are essentially the same endings as third conjugation present active indicative verbs, but instead of short e turned I, we have a in front of the personal endings ost, mostis, und. Now let's take a look at second conjugation present active indicative endings. Second conjugation verbs have a thematic vowel of long e. As an example, we will use dokeo, dokeire, dokui, doktum, teach. Again, take the first principal part, in this case dokeo, and lop off the o, leaving the present system stem. Then, add the thematic vowel and personal endings to get these: dokeo, dokes, doket, dokemus, doketis, dokent. These endings look a lot like the third conjugation future active indicative endings, so how can you tell the difference? This is one reason why it is so important to memorize all principal parts of a verb. If you know a verb's principal parts, you'll know its thematic vowel and will be able to identify its tense. Speaking of the future tense, let's look at how the future active indicative endings differ in the first and second conjugation verbs. We will continue to work with amo and dokeo as our exempla. Future tense endings for first and second conjugation verbs basically follow this structure: thematic vowel plus bi, which is the future tense marker, and your personal endings. Remember that the future tense is part of the present system, so we still get our stem from the first principal part. Here is amo in the future active indicative: amabo, amabis, amabit, amabimus, amabitis, amabunt. Compare this to dokeo in the future active indicative: dokebo, dokebis, dokebit, dokebimus, dokebitis, dokebunt. Alright, last stop: conjugating perfect active indicative first and second conjugation verbs. But guess what? You already know how to do this. These use the exact same endings that you learned in Chapter 4. Regardless, let's take a look at amo and dokeo in the perfect active indicative: amawi, amawisti, amawit, amawimus, amawistis, amawerunt. And dokui, dokuisti, dokuit, dokuimus, dokuistis, dokuerunt. Remember that when conjugating verbs in the perfect system, you get your stem by removing the I from the end of the third principal part. We have now unlocked a whole new world of verbs. Our sentences will only get more interesting from here. Remember to be regularly studying your forms. Even 5 to 10 minutes per day will help you internalize these endings, in turn making reading so much easier. Waleta!